wouldn't just say.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to History Trails. Tonight, we're diving into one of the wildest stories from ancient Rome. The tale of a man who proved his courage not with a sword, but with his own hand in the fire. This isn't just a legend, it's a story the Romans told to remind themselves what true bravery looked like. A captured soldier, standing before his enemies, chose to show them he feared pain less than he feared dishonor. And he did it in a way so shocking, his name still echoes 2,000 years later. So grab a seat, settle in, because tonight we're stepping into the flames with the Roman hero who tested his own hand in fire.
The Roman hero who tested his own hand in flames. He was a Roman spy, and his mission had gone catastrophically wrong. Captured behind enemy lines after killing the wrong man, his life was over. But what he did next wouldn't just save his own life, it would become a legend that saved the entire Roman Republic. He would prove his determination by holding his hand in an open fire. This is the story of Gaius Mucius, the man who would go down in history as Scaevola, the left-handed. It's a story of impossible courage that blurs the line between man and myth, and a testament to the terrifying power of Roman resolve. But to understand the fire, we first have to understand the siege. And to understand the sacrifice, we have to understand what was at stake. To get how we got here, we need to rewind. The year is 508 BCE. The city of Rome is young, fragile, and in the middle of a grand experiment. Just a year before, its people had risen up and kicked out their seventh and final king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquin the Proud. The tyranny of monarchy was over, replaced by a radical new idea, a republic, a government of the people. But freedom, once you grab it, is rarely secured without a fight. Tarquin the Proud, though exiled, wasn't defeated. He was an Etruscan, and he went looking for help from his powerful relatives to the north. He found his champion in Lars Porsenna, the mighty king of the Etruscan city of Clusium. Porsenna was a formidable figure, a king whose power was felt all across central Italy. Maybe he was persuaded by Tarquin's pleas, or maybe he just saw a chance to crush the upstart Roman Republic and expand his own territory. Either way, Porsenna gathered his armies. He marched on Rome not just to put a king back on his throne, but to crush this new republic before it could even take its first real breath. The Etruscan army's approach was a shock. They swept down from the north, catching the Romans completely by surprise and capturing the Janiculum Hill, a strategic high point on the west bank of the Tiber River. From there, the city of Rome lay totally vulnerable. Panic gripped the population as farmers scrambled for the safety of the city walls, their only way in being a single wooden bridge across the river, the Pons Subletius. The fall of Rome didn't just seem possible, it felt inevitable. In these desperate hours, legends were forged. This is where the hero Horatius Cocles, with just 2 friends, held that narrow bridge against the entire Etruscan army, buying the Romans precious time to tear the bridge down behind them. Horatius's stand was an act of stunning courage that saved the city from being taken immediately. But it didn't end the war. Porsenna's army was huge and disciplined. When he couldn't storm the city, he settled in for a siege. He would simply starve Rome into submission. The dying city. A siege is a slow, creeping death. It isn't the sudden violence of a battle. It's a relentless, grinding pressure that wears down the will just as it starves the body. Lars Porsenna's forces controlled the land, and with the Tiber River blocked, they choked off Rome's lifeline to the outside world. The city, once a bustling center of trade, became an island of desperation. The granaries started to empty. The once vibrant markets fell silent. Day by day, things got worse. The Roman Senate, the same group that had engineered the birth of the Republic, met constantly, their faces etched with worry. They had overthrown one king, only to face being wiped out by another. The spirit of the people, so defiant before, began to crack. Patriotism doesn't count for much when you're starving. Hope was fading. The valor of Horatius at the bridge was a great story, but you can't eat a memory. The city was dying. Despair was spreading faster than any plague. The senators debated and prayed, but Porsenna's iron ring around the city held firm. It became brutally clear that traditional warfare wasn't going to save them. If Rome was going to survive, it wouldn't be because of its walls or its legions, which were now trapped and wasting away. It would take something else entirely, an act so audacious, so completely unexpected, that it could shatter the logic of the siege. The Republic didn't just need a soldier, it needed a symbol. It needed a hero willing to risk it all, not on the battlefield, but in the very heart of the enemy's camp. It was in this atmosphere of impending doom that a young Roman nobleman named Gaius Mucius stepped forward. The main historical account from the historian Livy paints him as a man of high birth and even higher resolve. He saw the suffering of his people, the fear in their eyes, and felt the deep shame of a proud city brought to its knees by hunger. For Mucius, this slow decay was worse than a quick death in battle. He decided he wouldn't just stand by and watch the Republic starve. He devised a plan that was as simple as it was dangerous. He would sneak into the Etruscan camp, find King Porsenna, and kill him. With the king dead, he figured, the Etruscan army would fall into confusion, the siege would collapse, and Rome would be saved. It was a mission he didn't expect to come back from. He went before the Senate to get their approval. Standing before the grim-faced leaders of the city, he laid out his plan. He wasn't asking for soldiers or supplies. He was asking for permission to sacrifice himself. As Livy tells it, he said, "I intend to cross the Tiber senators and enter the enemy's camp. I have a greater deed in mind if the gods are with me." Trapped between the certainty of starvation and the razor-thin hope of Mucius's plan, the Senate agreed. They were signing off on a suicide mission. But in the desperate math of war, it was a chance they were willing to take. Gaius Mucius hid a dagger in his clothes and, under the cover of darkness, slipped out of the city, carrying the fate of the Republic on the tip of his blade. The fateful error. The Etruscan camp was a sprawling city of tents and fortifications, a clear sign of Lars Porsenna's power. It was buzzing with the disciplined activity of thousands of soldiers, all confident in their king and the ongoing siege. For a lone Roman spy, it was the most dangerous place on earth. Gaius Mucius moved like a ghost through the camp, every nerve on fire. His life depended on staying invisible until the last possible second. His target was the king's tribunal, the center of power. He got a lucky break. It was payday. This created a crowd and a commotion, the perfect cover for an assassin. Soldiers were gathered around a raised platform where payments were being handed out, their attention fixed on the proceedings. Mucius worked his way through the crowd, his eyes scanning the platform for his target. He saw two men in rich clothes seated in positions of authority. One was actively dispensing the pay, a scribe or treasurer. The other sat beside him, observing, clearly a man of importance. In the chaos of the moment, Mucius had to make a split-second decision. He saw that the scribe was the one orchestrating everything, the center of the day's business. To Mucius, he seemed to be the man in charge. Livy suggests Mucius was afraid to ask who the king was, in case he gave himself away as a stranger. He had to trust his gut, and drawing on all his courage, he made a fatal mistake. He assumed the busy, well-dressed scribe was King Porsenna. He pushed closer, his hand gripping the hidden dagger. The moment was here. With a surge of adrenaline, he lunged from the crowd, broke through the guards, and plunged his dagger into the man he thought was the king. The blow was swift and deadly. The man slumped over, and the scene erupted into screams and chaos. But as Mucius stood over the body, a terrible realization hit him. The guards rushed to protect the other man on the platform. He had killed the king's scribe, not the king. The real Lars Porsenna rose to his feet, his face a mask of shock and fury. The mission had failed at the very instant of its apparent success. Before Mucius could even think about escaping, the king's bodyguards seized him. He was disarmed, bound, and dragged before the throne of the very man he had just tried to kill. He was a captive, a failed assassin, facing the full wrath of a powerful monarch. The moment of truth hadn't been the thrust of his dagger. It was about to come now, in the face of his catastrophic failure, a declaration of defiance. Being captured like this should have meant the end of all hope. Gaius Mucius stood before Lars Porsenna, surrounded by enraged Etruscan soldiers, the body of the king's scribe lying nearby as proof of his failure. He could expect no mercy. The standard punishment would be torture for information, followed by a gruesome execution. The king, his voice shaking with rage, demanded to know who he was and who his co-conspirators were. But Mucius had come to the camp ready to die, and his failure hadn't changed that. If anything, it had hardened his resolve. He had failed in his mission, but he would not fail in his defiance. Looking the king straight in the eye, his voice cutting through the tense silence, he spoke with shocking boldness. "I am Gaius Mucius, a citizen of Rome. He declared, "I came here as an enemy to kill my enemy, and I am as ready to die as I am to kill." We Romans act bravely, and when adversity strikes, we suffer bravely. This wasn't a captive begging for his life. It was a proud, unbending statement of who he was and why he was there. He wasn't a common killer. He was a soldier in an act of war. He was turning his personal failure into a statement about the character of his people. We Romans act bravely. We suffer bravely. He was no longer just one man. He was the embodiment of Rome itself. But he wasn't done. He then delivered the threat that changed everything. He told Porsenna that his own death meant nothing. He was just the first. He revealed that he was one of 300 young Roman nobles who had all sworn the same oath, to kill the king, no matter the cost. "I was the first," he warned. "The lot fell to me. The rest are coming, each in his own turn, until one of us succeeds." Imagine how those words hit Porsenna. He had just survived one assassination attempt by pure luck. Now he was being told that 299 more were on their way. He was no longer a king besieging a city. He was a marked man. Every shadow, every new face could be the next assassin. Mucius had brilliantly turned a failed mission into a psychological weapon, planting seeds of terror and paranoia right in the king's own mind. Porsenna was a hardened ruler, not easily scared. He listened to the Romans' bold speech, a mix of fury and disbelief on his face. He threatened Mucius with fire, promising to burn him alive if he didn't reveal everything about this conspiracy. This was the final test. Was this Roman just bluffing? Or was the resolve of these new republicans really this strong? Porsenna ordered a portable altar, already lit with sacrificial flames, to be brought close. The moment had arrived. Mucius had made his claim. Now he would be forced to prove it. If you're finding this story of Roman grit as incredible as we do, take a second to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We explore the most dramatic moments of ancient history every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now back to the fire. The hand in the fire. The air in the Etruscan camp was thick with tension. King Porsenna had made his threat. The brazier, with its licking flames, stood between the enraged king and the defiant Roman. It was meant for sacrifice, but Porsenna planned to use it for torture. Death was certain for Mucius. The only question was how he would meet it. What he did next, nobody could have predicted. He didn't need to be forced. With a look of total contempt for the pain to come, he stepped forward. He didn't wait to be dragged to the fire. He walked toward it as if approaching an altar. Then, without a word, without a moment's hesitation, he thrust his right hand, the hand that had held the dagger, directly into the heart of the flames. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. The sight was horrific, but it was Mucius's reaction, or lack of it, that struck everyone with a chilling awe. He didn't scream. He didn't flinch. He didn't try to pull his hand away. He just stood there perfectly still, his eyes locked on Lars Porsenna, his face a mask of pure, unbreakable will. He held his hand in the fire as if it was something that didn't even belong to him. He was demonstrating in the most gut-wrenching way possible that pain meant nothing to him. His body was cheap. Physical suffering was nothing compared to the glory of Rome and the completion of his duty. The Romans had a concept called virtus, which meant more than just courage. It meant manliness, excellence, and character. But Mucius was embodying another Roman virtue, patientia. This wasn't just patience, but a rugged endurance, the mental and physical toughness to withstand pain and hardship. In that moment, Gaius Mucius was the living incarnation of patience. He was showing the Etruscan king that the Roman spirit could endure things that would shatter ordinary men. He was making his earlier threat terrifyingly real. If one Roman could do this, what were 300 more like him capable of? The spectacle was so shocking that King Porsenna himself was completely overcome. He jumped up from his throne, his anger forgotten, replaced by horrified admiration. He ordered his guards to pull Mucius away from the fire. Porsenna, who just moments before was ready to torture and kill him, now saw him as something more than a man. "Go back," the king declared, his voice filled with awe. "You do more harm to yourself than to me. Go free." He realized that you can't terrorize a man who doesn't fear pain. You can't defeat an enemy who holds his own life in such low regard. In a stunning reversal, the king, who was the target of the assassination, was now the one setting the assassin free. Mucius, his right hand now a charred ruin, had succeeded through his failure. He hadn't killed the king, but he had done something far more effective. He had terrified him. As Mucius was led from the camp, no longer a captive, but a figure of dread and respect, the balance of the war had shifted for good. The aftermath and the birth of a legend. The release of Gaius Mucius sent a shock wave through both camps. For the Etruscans, and especially their king, the incident was a deeply disturbing omen. Lars Porsenna was a smart and experienced ruler. He understood power, and he understood fear. The sight of Mucius holding his hand in the fire was more than just a display of personal bravery. It was a strategic message. It told Porsenna that his own life was in constant danger from an enemy immune to the normal rules of fear and pain. The threat of 300 more assassins, which might have seemed like a bluff, now felt terrifyingly real. The cost of taking Rome had just gone up dramatically. It was no longer a simple siege. It was a personal battle against an army of ghosts who could appear at any moment. Porsenna, deeply impressed and genuinely scared, decided it wasn't worth the risk. He had come to restore a king, not to lose his own life to a fanatic. Almost immediately, he sent ambassadors to Rome not to demand surrender, but to offer peace. The Roman Senate, which had been preparing for the city's final collapse, was stunned. Porsenna's terms were still harsh. Rome had to give up territory and provide hostages, But the main goal of the invasion was abandoned. There was no more talk of putting Tarquin the Proud back on the throne. The Republic would be allowed to live. Rome agreed. The siege was lifted, and the Etruscan army withdrew. When Gaius Mucius returned to Rome, he was met as a hero. The story of his defiance spread like wildfire, turning him into a living legend. His ruined right hand wasn't a mark of failure, but a badge of honor. In recognition of his incredible courage, he was given a new name, Scaevola, meaning the left-handed. The state also rewarded him, granting him a large plot of land on the bank of the Tiber, which from then on was known as the Mucia Prata, or Mucian Meadows. And so the legend was complete. A single act of defiance had done what the Roman army couldn't. Mucius Scaevola, along with Horatius at the bridge and a brave hostage named Cloelia, became part of a founding trio of heroes from this desperate early war. Their stories became essential chapters in the grand story of the Roman Republic, tales of courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable love for their city. Myth, reality, and Roman virtue. The story of Gaius Mucius Scaevola is one of the most powerful in Roman history. But did it actually happen? For historians, the story is full of problems that suggest it's more myth than reality. Most scholars today see it as a foundational legend, a patriotic story designed to explain Roman values, not a factual account of events. The main sources for the story, the historians Livy and Dionysius of Halicarnassus, were writing about 500 years after the events supposedly took place. Their work was often meant as a moral guide, presenting idealized versions of the past to inspire the Romans of their own time. Several details cast doubt on the story. The name Gaius Mucius Scaevola is probably an anachronism. The Scaevola family isn't recorded until centuries later. In fact, some Roman historians like Tacitus later wrote that Porsenna didn't just besiege Rome, he actually captured it. In that version of events, these heroic stories look a lot more like patriotic damage control, written later to paper over the humiliation of an early defeat. Even the act of burning the hand is suspicious. This kind of punishment was sometimes used on traitors, leading some scholars to think the original story might have been about a Roman traitor who showed incredible fortitude, which was later twisted into a patriotic tale. But to dismiss this story as just a myth is to miss its real importance. Whether or not a man named Gaius Mucius actually burned off his hand is almost beside the point. The real power of the story is what it tells us about the Romans and the values they cared about most. The legend of Scaevola was a lesson in Roman virtue. It was a powerful illustration of virtus, that essential quality of manly courage and excellence. It demonstrated patientia, the ability to endure unimaginable pain for a greater good. And it embodied pietas, a sense of duty to one's country, family, and gods. This story, and others like it, formed the moral bedrock of the Republic. It taught generations of Romans that duty to the state came before personal safety. Throughout Roman history, The image of Mucius Scaevola holding his hand in the fire was used as a potent symbol of republican ideals and resistance against tyranny. The legend's power is so great that there's a story, perhaps just an old schoolyard tale, that a young Friedrich Nietzsche tried to prove it was possible by burning his own palm over lit matches to impress his friends. The legend may not be historical fact, but its impact on our understanding of Roman identity is undeniable. It's a story that was maybe too good, too powerful, and too perfectly Roman to be true. But because of that, it became true in a much more important way, as an eternal testament to the ideals that built an empire. The story of Gaius Mucius Scaevola is a journey into the heart of what it meant to be Roman. It begins with a city on the brink of collapse, where a young republic, having just thrown off a king, is facing total annihilation. Into this world steps a man willing to embrace failure and death, a spy who, in his moment of greatest error, finds an even greater victory. His botched assassination attempt becomes the prelude to an act of almost unbelievable defiance. By thrusting his hand into the fire, Mucius Scaevola did more than prove his own courage. He weaponized it. He showed a powerful king that he was up against an enemy who didn't play by the normal rules of fear and self-preservation. This single, terrifying act of will broke a siege and saved a nation. The legend he created became a cornerstone of Roman identity. It was a story told to children, a scene painted by artists, and a principle cited by philosophers. While historians rightly question if it really happened, its truth lies in the ideal it represents. All nations are built on powerful myths like this, stories that capture their highest aspirations. The Roman hero who tested his own hand in flames is more than just an ancient tale. It's a timeless exploration of how legends are made, how nations are saved, and how one single act of resolve can echo through eternity. It leaves us with a final question. What is the line between history and myth, and which one, in the end, has the greater power to shape the world? Thank you for joining us on this journey back to the dawn of the Roman Republic. If you want to explore more of the incredible stories that shaped the ancient world, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We have many more legends to uncover. Feel free to share your thoughts on the story of Scaevola in the comments below. Do you think it was history or myth? And don't forget to check out our other videos on the heroes of the early republic. Until next time, stay curious.